Do you feel like it's an advantage to have been through as many sectors as possible? Or do you feel like you can be the best dry bulk expert in the world and don't really care about anything about containers? Or do you need that flexibility and understand the different segments? Because they're not the same, right? But you can learn a lot from each of them and combine that knowledge, right?
That's very well put, Christopher. I mean, the ability basically to see the similarities as well as the differences, I think is key to understanding anything that goes on in the shipping market, from say demand drivers and dynamics to geopolitical impacts, and they all affect in a different way. But I'm a firm believer in the more you know about something, the better you will be also to say basically think about it and consider where is this going, and I think that's the key ability for anyone that covers say a lot of different sectors or one sector only, having an idea of what comes next. What should those that follow you get out of say hearing your line of thoughts on what comes next, be it well, currently right now, when we are talking in end March, the Ukraine-Russia crisis is, of course, one of the things that catch everyone's attention, and being able to also share some thoughts on what would the world look like in terms of, say, disruptions to global logistics if the US were to put sanctions on China for not following the path and the road of Western nations. I mean, it requires big thoughts, and there are no straight answers to that. But I think the ability to believe and imagine, I guess that, what was that? Albert Einstein saying at some point in time that imagination is more important than knowledge. I believe in a firm combination of those, and I trust basically that if you start perhaps a bit more simple in dry bulk, and then work your way through various sectors, well, you can only take something away from that and benefit going forward, because you also need, say, that information and that knowledge and that insights when you meet a lot of great people in the industry from time to time in various positions, and they may actually also have moved from one sector to the other. So there's always good stuff to take away from being, say, more of a generalist or, say, more of a specialist.
But if we start broad in the container market, how do you summarize it? Because since there's so many factors at play, it's almost like hard to know where to start. But it's the simplest way to start is just to say that you have an importer, you have an exporter, and something in between needs to happen. But that something in between is massive, and it's so many factors at play at the same time.
I think it's important just to mention a few of the main actors in the market up front. I mean, in container shipping, a lot of focus is, of course, on the liner business and the carriers themselves, those that owns the asset that transport the goods. But naturally, at Xeneta, our key customers are the shippers, those that basically transport the goods and have that, say, service requirement to the carriers, and rightly require very sophisticated logistics, basically, to carry out their business, because the service provider from a shipping perspective here is the carriers trying to set up an also quite complex network that combine all of the, as we discussed before, all the various products that goes into one finalized product, because a lot of the things that are moved in containers right now by many shippers on a global scale are intermediaries, that they are semi-finished goods. So you need basically a lot of insights into your own business before you can procure freight like a pro, and basically have that, say, inside of your own business at the benefit also of the carrier, of the liner company that can then optimize their logistics there. But I think also a freight forwarder is doing an excellent job in the market right now. And I think basically what comes out of 2 extraordinary years for container shipping right now, I mean, we had 10 years of, say, gearing down towards a different level of globalization. Well, imagine that we just had 2 years of windfall profits to the carriers. And they are, of course, seeking to put all of those money into to great investments. We saw already towards the end of last year some of that $50 billion being spent on new ships, but having profits exceeding $100 billion in combination. we certainly see also a need for those carriers to seize the opportunity that they are eyeing in the market right now. So buying up other logistics providers, adding air cargo also to their offering, becoming more of a one-stop shop for global logistics, and for sure. Some freight forwarders will feel the squeeze on this. Some small shippers will feel the force of being, say, offered one product only. That's the spot market. Whereas some shippers may be able to actually make good use of this opportunity, because the way I see it is that there's also an opportunity to take away from the shippers here. If they find out that they are unique or special or particularly strong on a few trades, they should, of course, make sure that they become the shipper of choice also for the carriers, and by that still form solid partnerships for their business going forward, in addition, of course, to other trades where they may find themselves at the mercy of the spot market.
Can we also just add on in that analysis how you would separate sort of like the big market trends, and you have this, like we had this growing in the feeder market, right? So is it also possible to just explain for people who are not that interested in shipping how this dynamic works? Because it seems like many people, or some people, saw so big opportunities that they actually also set up new routes and also use that as an advantage, right?
I think the carriers of the world constantly optimize their global networks, and so do freight forwarders. Everyone else in logistics are trying constantly, of course, to solve the problems of their customers. So during the pandemic and during the most recent disruptions from the Ukraine-Russia crisis, and of course also the most recent slew of lockdowns in China, everyone is trying to solve the problems. I mean, from one perspective, we have never seen such an appallingly low service level by global carriers. But in all fairness, they have also struggled to keep up with, struggling hinterland connectivity in main ports, and for truck drivers' licenses. COVID licenses. Can they crisscross a country like they used to, or are they basically prohibited from carrying out the business that they once did? So in many ways, I mean, the first mile of any, product from end to end is equally important to the last mile. Often in businesses you talk about the last mile because that's basically happening in Northern America and Western Europe. But the first mile in China, in Far Eastern Asian manufacturing hubs, Korea, Japan, of course, is at least as important to make sure that the goods are moved in and out, semi-finished one way, finished the other way, and then of course to the super efficient ports before they travel around the globe. So I think it's also fair to access that the world have never seen, so many boxes being transported on a global scale, and that's of course why obstacles and problems also occurred, especially during times of crisis like we have seen recently.